I think your industry, the team that you're working with, you are about to take off in a way that I don't think many people would think possibly yet. And I think you're on the cusp of something absolutely dramatic and amazing. We live in a golden age of you've got your smartphone in your pocket. Countries are vying for the productive, the young, and anyone who's got at least a few dollars in their pockets. I'm telling everyone, however hard and expensive it may be to leave, it's not going to get any cheaper and it's not going to get any easier.
This episode of the Free Cities podcast is brought to you by Veritas Villages. Now, Veritas Villages are freedom-oriented, energy self-sufficient luxury communities designed for people who want to enjoy peace of mind and real freedom in today's unpredictable world. Join a community of like-minded neighbours who value privacy and independence in a place where you can use Bitcoin, including for the purchase of your property. www.veritasvillages.com/free cities for more info, and in the meantime, enjoy the conversation. Sven, excellent. Do you know what I just did? I was like, since I last spoke to you, I haven't really had any sort of Sark updates or any, not even that many thoughts about it. It's kind of like, because it was all building up to such a crescendo, it then fell off a cliff. So what I just did was I just did Google News, Sark UK. I thought I'd better see, but it's very, very funny what came out. I was expecting to see drama with the Barclay brothers and blah, blah. Let me tell you this is the most recent 6 articles written about Sark. And this is just classic Sark. Number 1 is the most recent: Sark tractor license fees could double as Sark budget debate. Right. Number 2, winter ferry changes are really hard for Sark pupils. Number 3, Sark needs to put economic development top of agenda. That's the most radical one. 4, Sark dairy farmers give up. That sounds sad. So they had a UK farmers set up a dairy farm and they've closed it now. The Sark crew tackles very tricky cliff fire. And the final one, rare diseases sufferer thanks lifesavers in Sark. Basically, Sark doing Sark things. No one really mentioning we need, apart from that one thing, which is Sark. This is the Guernsey press as well. The others are BBC, all BBC. Sark needs to put economic development top of agenda. But all the rest of it seemed pretty depressing. Things closing down, things shutting. So, come on, you're the man on the ground. What's happening in Sark right now, regardless of all the other stuff? Is it, did Sark have a bit of a lull after the result of all your sort of work came through, or were people on the island not as invested in the idea so much as you were, obviously?
So I'm obviously biased and I'm talking up my own book, but my expectation after our deal didn't come through was always that Sark at best was going to stagnate and probably was actually going to, gently slide downhill. And I think it is a reasonable and possibly even quite objective assessment to say that this year Sark has definitely gone downhill, possibly edged towards, call it crisis. Yesterday, the budget came out. Chief Police, the Parliament of the island, has to approve the budget every year, and that meeting is coming up. My taxes are going up 21%.
And that's a lot, considering, because they're not much anyway.
In percentage terms, it's a lot. Taxes across the board are going up massively. It's now being recognized that there is a backlog of infrastructure investments and more financial obligations coming down the road. I would say that even though there are no official statistics, businesses in Sark have generally not done all that well this year. You hear different things from different people. But what you can say is that the quality of tourism seems to decline further. We have the so-called T and P tourists, which are the worst kind of tourists because they're basically day trippers who come to the island, often from cruise ships. They buy a tea, they use the facilities, so they're basically costing the money, because you need infrastructure for them, and they don't really leave revenue on the island. And all of that is indicative of an island that I think it's a bit like, the general situation in Europe where, yes, things are great in a way, and much of the rest of the world would love to have the same problems, but it's sort of declining. It's, cynics would say, or would ask, have they given up the will to live? And is anything ever going to improve? And I think the headlines that you picked from the news sources there,
I didn't even pick them.
Indicative.
That was it. That's all I had to go on.
Yes, and that's before you have mentioned the never-ending drama about the electricity company, which has now led to Guernsey offering a loan of $1.5 million, which would not even, begin to cover the investments needed, but would, in a way, move Sark away from being debt-free and not being answerable to anyone to then having a creditor that happens to be the neighboring bigger island. Are these developments that would make me, enthuse me to buy a house there, build a business, invest into the future? No, I'm very happy to live there. I'm very open about I'm using the special status of Sark for my own advantage. I'm also giving something back to the community. I do pay my taxes. But am I building a future there? Not at all. I've said for years I'm renting because this island has huge issues and they could only be unblocked, in my opinion, through either a major investment or a major initiative, everyone coming together. Something big has to happen. All this small stuff that's being done, if it's even getting done at all. I mean, the electricity saga has been rumbling on for so many years that I've long stopped following it. It's not very inspiring, and it's a great place to live. If you're older, then you can say, yeah, I'll just live out my days. It's good enough for me. But is there a future for young people? Is there a prosperous, confident future for Sark as an independent and truly unique entity? There's a question mark.
It strikes me a little bit, like you say, it's like there was an opportunity for massive change, and because it wasn't taken, even Sark, with its such a small government, goes back and does government things. It's like, we need more money, so let's take more money. The opportunity was there for a solution, and because it wasn't taken, now, and this is what I see in mainland UK, like there's a failing government that's broke, which is slowly fleecing people, instead of basically inviting people to come in, bring their capital, bring all their productivity, and then sort of correct the problem that way. The way they seem to be addressing it is by saying, no, do you know what, let's try and rinse a little bit more money out of the people that we've got, or maybe try and borrow a bit more. It seems like maybe the Sark government, even though it's tiny, is still doing the same thing.
Pretty much. And I mean, this is where we're getting into politics and personalities, but I would say even more so after the recent wave of members of parliament stepping down. So there was another article that, might pop up somewhere on Google if you look for it, about, I think in the last 12 months, 6 members of Sark's parliament have stepped down, which is a third of them. And
for what? I mean, not some, they have, just because they don't believe in the place anymore, or because they...
It's always a combination of reasons, and I can't speak for them, but I can, point towards what they've said in public and which was printed in the media, which is along the lines of not being heard, no new ideas being considered, Sark being run by a small elite that wants to keep, other people from having a say, even though they're a member of parliament. I mean, none of this is unusual. That's politics everywhere.
It's a microcosm of the UK, really, isn't it?
I am currently, for a long time I've been saying that Sark's problems and challenges and also opportunities are really not all that unique. It's sort of like the same in every small island jurisdiction around the world. And sadly, now I'm inclined to say its problems and where it finds itself is not too dissimilar from the rest of Europe, always with a caveat or with the addition that Sark is sort of at least 50 years behind the rest of Europe in many ways, which is the saving grace. So, welfare entitlements have not grown out of proportions because there just basically is hardly any welfare system. And there is no major issue with debt that's been accumulated by governments. But it's going in that direction, and you can only live off past achievements for so long. And the demographics of the place, I think, are quite telling. There's the old saying that demography is destiny, and the average age of Sark is now above 60 again. And I think I can say that now that I'm above 50 myself. From a certain age, you think differently, and you probably also care less about the future because it's not going to be your future. You just want to hold on to what you've got. And this is the generational conflict that exists elsewhere in the world, across Europe. And there was a certain period during the pandemic when Sark's population was rejuvenated to a certain extent. I had a bit of a hand in that. And we've had churn in the meantime, and things going back somewhat towards, where we used to be. And the average age is, I think now, I don't think there's an up-to-date official statistic, but I would say just walking around, you see the place is old. It's also physically falling apart. And none of that is, again, coming back to what I said earlier, inspiring to build a future in Sark. That said, I'm having a great time there. My taxes, even though they're up 21%, I think most people would love to be in my place. It's all relative, we're complaining about things that are actually not that bad.
I take it your tax increase isn't a tractor license. What caused 21% of your taxes to go up then? Is that income tax or something? Or
so we have a simple system in Sark, but it has several options, and I'll just explain one because that's the one that applies to me. You can basically say, in simplified terms, I don't want to declare income, I don't want to declare assets. Instead, I pay a sort of flat tax that is based on the size of the property I inhabit as owner or as tenant. And that's what I do. And the budget has come out. Sark needs money. Sark has been burning through its reserves for years. There's virtually nothing left now, which is very different to where Sark used to stand. Interestingly enough, it used to be pre-democracy, pre-2008, when democracy was introduced, that Sark actually, from what I know, had significant reserves, and they've been, spent over the years. So now to generate more revenue, taxes need to go up, and 21% is, for me, it's not a big deal, being very honest about it. But for someone who has, who lives off a regular employment salary, I don't think their salary is going up 21% this year. Different people have different increases. I heard someone say 14% yesterday. It depends a bit on your circumstances. But yeah, it's a massive increase, and it's just indicative of what's happening. And you read the budget and you know exactly it's not going to be enough.
It's another victim of democracy, then, we can say, quite.
I would also possibly...
The democratic system,
possibly even more so lack of planning. Because issues that are arising now, which are costing money, have long been known, could have been planned for, could have been dealt with in a more creative way. And
that's what I mean about the democratic process, though, because often that is the result you get, trying to get consensus. If someone, and I think if I understand correctly, prior to the democratic system, it was a top-down system.
Top-down, but dominated or operated by the landowners who have multi-generational interests rather than wanting to get through the next year's budget or the next election. That was the difference in my view. There's a lot of feudalism nostalgia on Sark when you speak to people.
When you were, I don't think I asked this at the time, but when you were trying to get, generate the investment to sort of replenish the place, did you talk about the governance model changing, or was it going to be considered exactly the same?
Not at all. We would have never done that because we did not want to be seen to be even considering to do the same thing as the current large portfolio owners that everyone knows of have done in the past. We were not going to tell the place how it needs to be run. There's an existing system, which we think is attractive overall. It has its flaws, but you can work with it. So whatever changes on the governance level would always be up to the voters, not any large investor.
I mean, how much can you say about what actually happened? I mean, I know obviously a deal wasn't struck, but can you elaborate a bit on what the problem was, or why it didn't happen? Because it seemed, obviously, from my perspective at least, it seemed like a massive opportunity. And I think if what you're saying now about the fact that since then things aren't going great, I'd say obviously.
And for no one.
Right, exactly. There's no winners here. There's absolutely no winners. So it's a no-brainer for me that getting the massive amount of investment would have been great, other than maybe for some 60 to 70-year-old people who just want to be left alone and don't want, possibly. I don't really know. I've never even been there. But can you explain kind of what happened and what,
It's actually pretty simple, and I've never been shy to summarize what happened from my perspective. So officially and on the surface, we simply could not agree on a price for the transaction. And you could, in a way, leave it at that. But then you can also speculate whether any price would have gotten the transaction done. And there may be legal or other reasons on the side of large property owners of Sark for why they didn't or maybe couldn't accept an offer or, in fact, any offer. And I'm sort of, I'd be risking getting into trouble for, spelling that out further, because that's, like getting into all sorts of legal quandaries and slander and all sorts of stuff. And I really, honestly, I don't care. What was important for me is that we raised the money. We had a plan, a proposal, and it wasn't accepted. It didn't go anywhere, and that's fine, and then you just, you move on with life. It's just speaking as a resident, it's sad to say that in a way, the place is probably not going in a great direction right now.
Is there a sense of "I told you so" floating around the island at all? I mean,
all I can say is that I have also been outspoken that, if no one, and, leave me aside, leave us, our group aside, if no one unblocks the backlog of infrastructural investment and the lack of long-term planning on Sark, then the place will not do well. And it's common sense. It's not surprising. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. If you live there, you see it on a daily basis. So would I say I told you so? No, because,
it's not neighborly.
It doesn't happen. And in a way, I'm in the luxurious position also, unlike my colleague and friend, the seigneur of Sark, who has a distinct long-term interest in the place by way of his, family's presence and interest and title. I'm in the luxurious position to say, I did my best and I delivered. My biggest worry at the time, to be very frank, was that I didn't raise the money that would have made me look unsuccessful. And we had the money and it didn't go anywhere. So from my perspective, I've just moved on and I do something else in my life. I'm not going to, tie my entire existence to Sark, as many other people do. But it's just sad to see.
So I'm going to pry a little bit because I'm interested. When you generate an amount of capital to invest, I'm assuming, I think you've told me this, that someone comes in, gives you a valuation, and then you generate that capital. Is there any negotiating after that? You said you put your bid in, you show, okay, this is what we think it's worth, here's the money. And if they say no, isn't there you mentioned that maybe they weren't even ready to receive any bids. You don't know that from their side, but...
Well, I would say two things. First of all, yes, there was. Will I share details of conversations that were held? No. But you can look up what's in the media. And in the media, it's very clear that we offered 20 million. The buyer says we wanted 100. And in a way, that ends the conversation.
Did you say you heard that in the media, or did they tell you that?
No, we were told that as well.
Why didn't their lawyer say we want 100 million or something to you directly? Presumably that would have been a...
Well, again, I don't want to go into specific conversations that were had between, multiple people at the table. But so, I can say that other people who looked at this real estate valued it at 16. We offered 20, so we already offered goodwill and a premium. And then, to look at 100, there's just no conversation to be had beyond that. That's the public side of things,
Fair enough. It's too big. Okay. Well, but what about your own personal opinion on the whole thing now then? I think the last I spoke to you was an email when I heard that the deal had fallen through. And I think I said to you, look, is that it? And you were like, never say never.
Well, so again, we're very open. And I think I'm actually going to write an article about this before the end of the year just to update people because I'm getting regular questions, being cornered on the Sark ferry literally yesterday, and people being curious. And in a way, I want to be very transparent. And we have a so-called special purpose vehicle, an SPV, a company, which is just a shell. It's the Sark Property Company. We have retained that. All 4 of the directors are still directors. It's in good stead. It's ready. I have investors who are, they would be delighted to take my call. When I rang up all of our investors last time and I said, we don't need your money after all, literally half of them immediately replied, when you need it again, just let me know. And now that I know so much more about it, I'd invest a larger amount. Raising money, once you've done it, is so much easier to do it a second time. Just as much, I have moved on with my life and I'm doing other things now. So yes, things could always be looked at a second time. Am I pursuing anything right now? Absolutely no, because I did invest 2.5 years of my life on it, and I'm not going to make Sark my life's mission. And sometimes you just also need to recognize there's not always a happy ending.
So what would it take for you to take back up the mantle of trying to kickstart this again? Would someone need to come in from the other side, the Barclay side? And
I'd say that's a question I could only really answer together with my 3 other directors. So I'm not going to answer that one right now. But the SPV is there. We have access to capital. Sark is staffed for capital. You see that. Wouldn't take much to, get things going. Just as much am I doing anything on that front right now? Absolutely no way. I'm very busy with very positive things that are happening in my life. So it's not even, remotely on my to-do list.
Well, I mean, that's a definitive answer. It's incredible, really, when you think about it. But when you look at the parties involved, there's 3 major parties. There's kind of you guys, there's the Barclays, the property owners, and then there's the people of Sark. And you can see the incentive for you guys and for the people of Sark to move forward. But the incentive for the other side is less obvious, especially if they're prepared to quote an extremely high fee.
And the obvious question which anyone will ask is, to what extent are they potentially hamstrung by financial and legal issues that exist on their side? You can only speculate about that. But, that's the first question any lawyer would ask in this situation. Is this about money, or are there other blockages that will prevent anything from happening? And this is another reason why I'm, not spending much time thinking about this, because that's, completely beyond my judgment, my insight, or, my power to do anything about.
Did you say earlier that you'd noticed that the tourism industry had quelled a little bit since then as well? Is that a factor of anything, or is that just that's nothing to do with the fact that there was a lot of press around the time when the bid was happening?
No. I'd say it's fair to say that Sark tourism has been in a secular decline probably for decades, which started with the Channel Islands, Guernsey, Jersey, Sark, Alderney were places where probably in the 60s and 70s you traveled for a bit of sunshine. But then cheap flights came into existence and people from the UK preferred to travel to Spain, where you've got guaranteed sunshine and everything else is a lot cheaper. And that trend has probably become more pronounced with the so-called cost of living crisis in the UK, where prices are up dramatically. Taking a family from the UK to Guernsey is really expensive nowadays.
I know. I looked into it. There's 5 of us.
Yep.
I looked into it. And it's not cheap to get that very short distance by plane.
And then you add to it the question whether the tourism facilities and what's on offer has improved in the last couple of decades. And I mean, given Sark's dilapidated status, I think the question answers itself. Sark lives of its natural beauty and its heritage and its history. And there are some great facilities on the island, but overall, it's not become exactly more competitive. Then Sark also occasionally gets a bit lucky. So this past year, there has been a significant influx of French tourists. So somehow the French have now discovered that you can, with effort.
Do they come straight from France?
No, this is one of the major issues, and that's been talked about forever. And that would be the most obvious thing to do to boost tourism. But because that was something that the Barclay family wanted back in the days, it's always been turned down on the back of that. That's a Barclay idea, which is why. this thing has
Did
not
they
gone
want
anywhere.
it for tourism reasons, or?
Yep, they owned hotels and they wanted tourists to come from Normandy and Brittany, where you've got 20 million people visiting every year. So you need like 0.5% of that to come to Sark and you're good.
It is. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's very close to France. Yeah. How long would a ferry ride be?
An hour or something like that. It's a complete no-brainer. It's been talked about for 15 years. Every year it's like, oh, it's really going to happen now. Like we've got a good new team and nothing ever happens.
But you were planning on upgrading the port as well. Would that have had an impact there as well?
That could have certainly facilitated, all sorts of other things. And instead, people are coming to a port that has issues, starting with comfort and convenience and ending with health and safety.
So French tourists are going to the UK and then flying to Guernsey, or
no, they come to Guernsey and Jersey first, and then do.
Can you get directly from France to?
Yep, you can. Okay. Yeah. But during some of the year when the weather is nice.
And what was the reason is that just something on Instagram probably that just kicked off
something just kicked off. So I mean, we had a couple of years when there were lots of cruise ships stopping over in Guernsey, and they then sent groups over to Sark, the famous T&P tourists. Now it's the French people coming, but overall, the numbers look okay, but the spend per visitor is not doing well, from what I hear anecdotally from a variety of business owners. No one's got any
presumably because they
statistics.
can't stay for too long either.
They can't stay for too long. There is a cost of living crisis. Restaurant owners tell me, people come in and order a meal but no drinks, or just want tap water, that sort of stuff.
It's true. Yeah. It's the same where I live, out in the rural England. People don't go out as much as they used to, especially when you consider that even a simple meal in the UK now is relatively expensive if you take your whole family out. It's not like it was. Yeah, I think I hate to sound negative, but there's it's a bit of a shit show at the moment, isn't it? Everywhere.
It is, and you could change things so easily and so quickly. So, for example, in September, I brought a group of 48 friends, colleagues, and readers to Sark for a weekend, where we, indulged quite lavishly in culinary delights and other activities. And business owners told me that one group coming in September, which is off season, made a significant difference for them. It's like literally, one person organizing one group already makes a difference in these businesses' fortunes.
Well, it would be, I don't know, I'd say it would be a perfect place to do retreats, wouldn't it? For, like business retreats, whatever. It would just be, it's got, I mean, obviously we, some people from our organization did such a thing.
and you had a great time.
Yeah.
So I hear. Yeah, absolutely. It could all be done. And in a way, it's almost heartbreaking and a bit of a shocker, why is so little happening? And as you said, one of the headlines you read on Google News is about the ferry timetable being thinned out so much that even the residents complain. Never mind tourists.
Well, maybe to end on let's end this section on a positive note. Maybe that it'll come to a head. I mean, could you predict that it would come to a head? I mean, there must be even a point where everyone's losing out.
This is generally how political change happens. Things have to get really bad before eventually they turn around. Is Sark in a spot yet where it's really bad? I don't think it is. But that's just my subjective perception, and other people may well disagree. In any case, I keep an open mind as to the entire thing. As I always keep saying, I'm just renting. I'm enjoying my time there. I've had some great years on Sark. My career has certainly advanced thanks to the exposure that I had through the whole attempt to invest in Sark. So I'm, positively satisfied with my Sark experience and not making my future dependent on it. But I'm also in a, very comfortable position, and I can easily say that for other people it's quite different.
Right. Well, let's talk about your other things that you're doing then. Let's turn this around. It's not all dark doom and gloom. You're speaking. We're at the Free Cities Conference, obviously in Prague. Welcome, by the way. And you're going to be talking, loosely speaking, and I like this term, vote with your money. We've got vote with your feet. We've got vote with your boat. We've got vote with everything except a little tick on a thing, which I think I could definitely get behind. But that's the title of what you're going to be talking about, and the subtitle is Investment Opportunities in the Era of Capital Flight. That's a very 21st century thing, isn't it? I mean, especially, I don't know how much you know about capital flight from the UK, but if what I read in the very normal press is anything, is true, it appears there's a lot of capital flight from the UK, and I think probably a lot of it spurred by potential government changes in taxation. Is that? I mean, you obviously know a lot about this. Why is there so much? Why are there so many millionaires leaving the UK, and why is there so much money leaving our shores?
So I think there's a whole number of subjects that we can speak about here, but let's start with the most obvious one, which is what's in the media every day. People leaving the UK and people with money or professional skills or the ability to build companies, they're leaving. I think what's driving it is not so much the absolute percentage tax rate or specific issues that they're upset about. I think what I see among my contemporaries is it's the fact that there's just no improvement in sight at all. When politics are bad and frustrating, you think, okay, in 2 years there's going to be another election and, we just need to sit this one out and then it'll be fine again. And this time people are saying, no, there's just no way out. I mean, first of all, the Labour government will be in power for, I think, another 3 years now, unless anything dramatic happens. And even then, I mean, we've had how many years of the Tories, and they've basically pursued policies that made Tory, like conventional or traditional Tory voters, absolutely despise them like never before. And in terms of, voting with your feet or voting with your money or your vote, there's this meme going around, which is basically that you can't vote your way out of this situation because we are in some way, as cynics would say, in a uni-party system where it doesn't matter who you vote for, different politicians, same crap, basically. No matter who you vote for, they can't make the permanent bureaucracy, aka deep state, go away. They can't make the accumulated debt and the entitlements go away. You might be able to inflate your way out of it, but that's not exactly what you want either. And it's a hopeless situation. And I see, interestingly enough, a lot of people in the UK, also very much so in Germany, people who would not previously have done more than to just moan about it. I see them packing up, selling up, and voting with their feet and taking their money with them. And that's a new development. And it's certainly, I think, building up. And it's going to be a continuous feature in the landscape. And that leads you to the next question. At what point are governments going to say, no more? We're bleeding out here. We need capital controls again. And that's something I've been speaking about for years now. And it seems like we're getting closer to that point.
So capital controls would be exit taxes and wealth taxes. Are they capital controls? Or?
So I think it's worth taking a step back and looking back in history. Capital controls used to be something fairly common until the 1980s, probably. It was not uncommon for countries, including Western countries, to basically tell its citizens you can only take a certain amount of money outside of the country every year, and you need to invest it at home, etc., etc. We have forgotten how recent capital controls were a fairly common feature of the financial landscape. And I started talking about this subject in 2022 when I was at a conference for family offices in Vienna. And I pointed out in a presentation to them that the various supranational institutions had put new regulation in place to make capital controls easier in the future, based around ideas such as capital controls are possible in circumstances related to national security, which of course is always, that's anything. And I found it very interesting that they introduced specific wording to allow capital controls as a preventative measure. So in between national security and a preventative measure, you can just do whatever you like. And once you give politicians power, they're going to use it to their advantage. And back in the days, if you spoke about capital controls, you were still somewhat, like a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist. Now what we're seeing, I think, is the rise of several different ways how to directly or indirectly introduce capital controls. One is, for example, exit taxes, and they're always done in a very pernicious way where, yes, of course you're allowed to leave, but, it's just, you just can't keep your company. You have to sell your company. And Germany is the know-how leader in this aspect. They invented exit taxes in the 1920s, and then the 1930s used one particular religious or ethnic group to really perfect the whole system of exit taxes, and they've been a world leader in it ever since. Other countries are introducing it. There are now issues or regulations, like, for example, I think Finland has just banned large numbers of foreigners from buying real estate in the country, which in a way is a sort of reverse capital control. You can't come in. And we're seeing more and more of that. And if the flow of capital to safe havens or perceived safe havens increases further, then you could see measures such as you can only take a certain amount outside of the country every year, which is, for example, something South Africans have been used to forever. It's going to come back.
It's interesting. You said that the meme now is, this is happening, which is new. I agree. And it's not just people that are into finance and people are into this kind of stuff. It's normal people talking about it now. So it's probably nearer to a bit of a flash, kind of like a flashpoint than we think, because already people are feeling the pain in daily life. And according to this, it's going to get worse because capital control. Do you include a wealth tax as a form of capital control?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know from experience that when certain people start talking about wealth taxes, it means it's coming. It's just, like it gets leaked out slowly but surely. And it's one of the most egregious taxes, I think, a wealth tax. It's one of the most miserly taxes. It's literally the one that they say, right, we've taxed you all the way up to the top, and now we want the rest. And it's the worst. The same with the exit tax. It's like, rather than being competitive to try and keep you here, I'm just going to stop you leaving. It's like when they put a wall up to stop you going, you know which side of the wall you're supposed to be on. It's like the same thing happened in East Germany. We know that. But I think when normal people in the pub start talking about these kind of things, and then it's quite serious. And like you say, I have a slightly different opinion. I think I see the uniparty idea is real, but I see a lot of people on the ground talking about potentially a third party idea. And from my perspective, I don't see any difference there. I think it doesn't matter what they say. They're still going to, even if they get into power, which it could, I would say at the moment, currently, probably more likely than anything, they're still going to hit the same blob, the same mass of bureaucracy, the same hole in the same deficit, the same everything. And there's not a lot you can do when you're a government because you don't make money. You either borrow it off you or me or institutions, or you take it from you or me or institutions. And they haven't got any other options. So what is the answer apart from, when I heard in the mainstream news that so many million millionaires, or so many, 16,000 millionaires had left or whatever, I think they were probably the smart money thinking about it. Probably not. There's probably smarter money that was even before them. But I would imagine that means that in the not too distant future, it's too late. You're either paying when you leave or you're not. And that's pretty bad for your average. I think middle class people, I was thinking about it the other day. I'm sorry to rant on a bit, but it's all welling up in me now. But I was thinking about our house that we own that's basically taken best part of 35 years to own, this lovely big pile of stone. No one else owns it, apparently. We do. And now I'm thinking, okay, it's potentially becoming a liability. So maybe then we'll save it, we'll sell it and move to a better place. And when I went through every stage of this process, I was basically being hammered. Selling it, taxed. I mean, keeping it, taxed. Selling it, taxed. Taking the money abroad to look for a better life, taxed. And it's like, they're so miserly. It's so wrong and broken, and so what do you do? I mean, obviously you would advise me to probably get the hell out, would you?
I'm telling everyone, however hard and expensive it may be to leave, it's not going to get any cheaper, and it's not going to get any easier. And to give you an example, I mean, or two examples, I moved to the Channel Islands in 2017 because I saw bad things coming our way, and I was too early. But I moved to Sark at a time when 20% of the real estate was empty, so I could literally freely pick the house that I wanted to live in. Try moving to the Channel Islands now, find anything, and it'll be twice as expensive, and you may not even get anything closely resembling of what you want. And then again, capital controls, and also just tightly sort of like connected to the subject of leaving. So 3 years ago, you could have gone to the Channel Islands and opened a bank account with a leading private bank with an opening deposit of 250,000. That's been upped to 2 million now. And it's a hard limit because the compliance regulations that banks are now under for non-resident clients have become so onerous that banks say, sorry, if you don't bring 2 million, we just literally can't deal with you. Sorry. So it's just getting harder and harder to get in. And I think that will only become more of a problem as more people move abroad. That said, there are always options. And much as, for example, the Channel Islands have a very limited housing stock and are sort of like full, you have places like Dubai where you can just, you just extend into the desert and you build. So yes, there's always an option somewhere. But generally speaking, it won't get easier to extricate yourself from your current country, and it will not get easier to get in elsewhere. That's before we've spoken about second passport programs and things like that, all of which become more and more regulated, more expensive. So I'm a broken record. I've been saying this for 25 years to people: just leave.
But presumably there is a geo arbitrage. There is competition worldwide for people. So you're talking about Europe, the UK, really Europe and the UK, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm talking about Europe and the UK because I'm of a certain age where, most of my contemporaries want to stay somewhere close to Europe or in Europe because of family and parents and things like that. Younger people may be more flexible. And the great news is that we live in the golden age of the digital nomad visa, the golden visa, and countries competing for the productive. And you also have more options than ever before. You need the money to pay for it, but you certainly have more options than ever before. And there's now this wonderful thing called the internet where you can look up all this information. In the 1990s, when I wanted to read up about alternative, tax residencies and passports and all that sort of stuff, you had to buy underground books, like books from underground publishers, and they were really expensive, and it was much more tedious. So in a way, it's a great time to be alive, and you just have to pick what's best for you. And in a way, the Free Cities conference where we're at these days is where I think the philosophy or the motto is very much, don't try to change the system where you are, because by God have we tried and it's not moving. Just build something new elsewhere, and that in a way includes build yourself a new life elsewhere where you are welcomed and liked and treated well.
And not ironically, as a matter of fact, there are more projects in the Free City space than ever before, and there is a real sense of momentum right now. And I'll be one of the closest people to many of the projects, and I can definitely attest to the fact that I can feel it already, especially even in the last few months. And that's why I mentioned the meme that you can vote with your feet has blossomed very quickly when you think about it. I mean, I think in this day and age with the internet, I think everything does. I think a good idea when it sort of gets released out into the wild these days will basically flourish, but on account of the internet. And that is one of the ones that I can't believe how many people I know, what I would call normal people, talking about options like this, which is unfathomable, especially in the UK, because I don't know. I love the UK. I love where I live. I love British culture. I feel a fully immersed Brit. I love it. But I'm still, I'm like, I think I'm like you, except I actually do own a property in the UK. And, but I don't feel sentimental about it anymore. It's weird. It's been a couple of years that so many cogs have been turning in my mind that I suddenly realise I'm no longer sentimental about wanting to spend my old age in the UK. And it's really sad in one sense, but it's also exciting because I'm in this world we're in now, which is super exciting. There's a lot of people doing a lot of things, but I'm one of those people that does have friends and family in Europe, and I do want to stay, but I'm quite prepared to go now. You know, and really, that's a major hurdle. That would have been a major hurdle for me. You know?
Yes, the number of people who are talking about this, considering it, and potentially, close to doing it, has probably gone up by 100-fold. Sort of, it's not a specific figure, but it's gone up by so many multiples that I can't even begin to imagine how many people that's now. Everyone's speaking about it.
Where do you advise then? Without too specific, do you just advise get out? Or where do you say that? Where are the best places to sort of migrate your capital to?
Well, on the one hand, it depends on your individual circumstances, but the advice I always give is, choose that one place that really appeals to you, even if it's not perfect. Just get out and learn and experience how it is to live in a different place. And then you improve and you optimize by moving on from there if you have to. Just make that first step. Don't. I'm speaking to a lot of people who are in this forever loop of talking about what's the perfect place where I'm going, and there is no perfect place. And if you think about that for too long, then you will just you will never move. And maybe that's just maybe some people just like speaking about it. But if you're serious about it, just move somewhere, rent something, try it out, and then move on if you don't like it.
I think the reason a lot of people keep speaking about it is because they're deeply optimistic that things are going to change. That's my feeling. I really feel like, I know, for example, there's been a few phases of people I know leaving the UK. The phase we're at now is, we'll see what happens in 3 years. We'll see if Reform or whoever it is do actually shake stuff up, which I don't think they will, because I thought Trump was going to shake things up. And, he's kind of, everything's bigger and more expensive and more money and more borrowing, everything, So I don't imagine. Have you got any anecdotal evidence of the kind of phases people go through when they actually decide to go? You're saying like get out and then sort of look back in hindsight. That's kind of what you're saying, isn't it? It's like, just try it, because if you don't try it, you'll never know what you're missing out on or whatever. Do people tend to sort of like dip their toes and then realize it's the right thing? Or do you get a lot of people coming back? Do you get a lot of people just jumping feet first? Or
so my best experience and most useful insights about this, I think, are from living in Sark and having helped a lot of people move to Sark in one capacity or another. And two things happen very often. One is that they are utterly shocked how easy it was and how nice life was subsequently once they were on the other side of the wall. And the other thing is that in any jurisdiction, and even more so in a tiny island jurisdiction, you have inevitably you have churn. People move somewhere and they realize it's not quite what I need or what I want. But then they're on the other side of the wall already, and then they don't move back to where they came from, but instead they move to somewhere else that might suit them better. And that's a recurring theme I see, and in a way that I hope inspires people to, take that jump and then just, work your way forward from there.
What about actual investment wise then? What are the options that mostly people sort of, what routes do most people go down in those terms?
Well, I think everyone always constantly speaks about real estate, which I find utterly boring, I have to admit, because the real estate you live in is not an investment. I would say the most exciting investment to speak about is your business. Wealth is mostly created from setting up and growing businesses. And I would say in this day and age of the internet and global options, to call it, for lack of a better word, it's extraordinarily exciting to look at jurisdictions and potential places to live from the perspective of, would I want to run a business from there? Would it be advantageous for my career as an entrepreneur, as a business builder, to be based there? And I think that's really the number one aspect to look at. The weather, transport links, the school system, food, culture, time zones, all of that is very, very important, and everything always comes as a package and nothing is ever perfect. But ask yourself, where do you want to build a business? Because that's where you're probably going to make the most money.
What do you think of the situation in America as an option for relocating capital, yourself, your family?
I think America is one of the most underappreciated options. So I have myself been, occasionally taking a curious look at that. And the reason for that is twofold. First of all, it's the world's biggest market. So if you want to build a business and you want to have a domestic audience that you can sell to, there's just nothing else unless you want to move to China, and I don't speak Chinese, so that's not my option. And the other one is that America offers many options because it's 50 or however many states, and then these sort of jurisdictions that are part of it, like Puerto Rico and Guam and whatnot else. And in between the different state systems for tax and different loopholes, I think tax is not too bad. And it is by far outweighed by the economy and the market being so big that, as I always say, I don't mind paying high taxes. If my income is 10 times higher than elsewhere, I'm still coming out ahead. It's just a lifestyle decision primarily. Some people love America, some people hate it. And it's not easy to get in, but there's so many interesting routes, some of which are underappreciated. It's all rapidly changing. I don't want to speak about individual visas because I'm not up to date on a day-to-day basis, but until fairly recently, the highly talented visa was a great route to get in. And I know 25-year-old kids who got in as highly talented, even though they were medium talented maybe.
Same with schools.
Yeah. So, the United States is a potentially great option. And it just goes to show there are different things work for different people. I'll tell you the most unusual option that you will never have heard about.
Go on. What do you want to bet that I haven't heard about?
Absolute shocker for you.
Right. I like a good guessing game. Give me a clue.
So, no, you won't be able to guess.
Okay.
It's the UK for me in my specific circumstances, because what everyone has completely missed noticing, because it doesn't apply to most people, when the Labour government canned the non-dom status, which was the ability for non-Brits to basically be based in the UK and only pay taxes on their local income and keep everything else outside of the country tax-free. When they canned that, they introduced a new set of rules that as a non-Brit, you can move to the UK and effectively live there as a non-dom for 4 years, provided you haven't lived there in the last 10 years. So because I've been away for 10 years, I could now move to the UK and spend 4 years there and only pay taxes on my local income and keep everything else outside of the country tax-free.
Wow. So you mean as in Sark is not the UK or...
Correct, yeah. Yeah. So I could move to London and I
pay
would
no
probably...
tax.
Well, I would pay a bit on what I need, to live and stuff, but I would probably, my global tax rate would be in the single digits.
You're right.
Limited to 4 years, not ideal if you have family, you want to relocate everyone and, schooling.
4 years is 4 years in this day and age. That's one of the symptoms of this day and age, I think, is people don't think in 25-year, batches.
Yep. And I'm saying that as to illustrate there are so many surprising options that you only find if you do a lot of research about this. The world's your oyster.
Yeah, well, I agree that the world's your oyster, but I also have to, acknowledge that my family's roots are well and truly in the ground where we are. And I think it's almost like I fall into the category of someone who would just have to take the kick up the arse from the government. There's not much I can do. If they decide to start wealth taxing my property, I don't know how it works necessarily. If it's anything like the US system, then I'm in trouble, because we've amassed, like for like I say, for 35 years we've been climbing the ladder of property. So
can I just add one thought here? Maybe also to just stress that it's not all about taxes, really. It's about, you get into trouble if you tweet certain things, if you've got certain opinions. They might want to inject you certain substances. They might want to lock you into your house for a year or two. You add up all of these different factors. It's not just about, saving taxes. It's just not a great place to live anymore in many ways, sadly.
No, I agree with you. I do 100% agree. It's just that, and I think this is where countries have you really, trapped, is that the longer you stay somewhere, the deeper your roots go. This is why countries, I think, like the Emirates, especially Dubai, somewhere like that, is still highly competitive, because there's only been a few generations of people that have ever even lived there. And as a result, their friends and family are probably still somewhere else. 90% of Dubai is incomers, and there'll be outgoers at the drop of a hat if things turn around. And places like the UK, they know that intrinsically. They can viscerally feel that they can do all kinds of stuff before you get up and go. And unfortunately, they appear to be doing that. And I'm one of the people who's kind of, I don't know, put it this way, it's discussed at the kitchen table for the first time in the last few years, the option of moving. I think currently in its form, it's like, well, let's wait for the kids to reach a certain age and then do it. But, if push comes to shove, it won't be that, I can assure you. I just know. What would be your line in the sand if to leave Sark, to leave Europe?
My circumstances are probably a bit different, in the sense that sort of every 7 or 10 years I tend to go for a significant life change. And I'm generally concerned that if you live in small island communities, and I'm not in one for the first time, I lived in the Galapagos Islands for quite some years as well, you become a bit too closely associated with that island, and maybe a bit too focused on that, island life. And then it's good to throw yourself into a different situation again, to make sure you remain competitive, and your life's not all about this one place that you live in. I don't know. I mean, I'm having that debate with myself. I mean, I have no one to speak to at the kitchen table, so, I just make my own decisions. But I'm talking to myself. I look at options, and for me, it's very much business and career driven. And I've had some unbelievable opportunities offered to me because of the work that I did in Sark. None of them has come through to a point where I have signed anything, but they're coming my way. And, will I be there forever? At the very least, for me, it's been an obvious thing to maybe move to Guernsey, where the infrastructure is better restaurants, less issues with, transport and infrastructure, and so on and so forth. I don't know. I'm looking at options, but I'm right now, I'm not going anywhere.
I'll be honest, we've had Guernsey and Jersey up on Rightmove a couple of times in the last few years. What I didn't realise is you have a two-tier housing market there, right? One for incomers and one for people from the area.
Absolutely, yeah. And the price differences are quite dramatic.
Yeah, it's like twice as much if you're an incomer.
Yeah, and again, there are so many loopholes and special regulations that you only are aware of once you really spend a bit of time researching that. So, for example, for me, once I've been in Sark for 8 years, I gain the right to live in the cheap part of the Guernsey housing market.
Because you're a local at that point.
It's a special thing for Sark.
But are there many renters? I can't imagine there would be many renters in that market.
Yeah, there's everything. I mean, Guernsey has 62,000 people, and I mean, I'm probably just used to there's just nothing on Sark.
No, but I mean, like if you look at where I live, rentals were decimated by, for example, Airbnb, because I live in a tourist area. So people realised that renting someone their house for like $1,000 a month, or renting it out 5 days a month for 1,000 is a better option. And as a result, there were very few properties to live in long term.
You can find rentals in Guernsey, and I would have less hesitation to buy something because Guernsey is not in an existential risk like Sark, for example. You buying a house in Guernsey doesn't mean you end up with a stranded asset, which in Sark you may well end up doing.
But if the government, whatever the UK government does, what are the implications on Guernsey and Jersey and Sark, for example? Sark, nothing. Right?
In the first instance, nothing, because these islands all govern themselves and they're independent from the UK. In the second instance, yes, there's a dialogue, and Guernsey and Jersey can't do any wild things. So if Guernsey tomorrow started to offer a business visa specifically for sanctioned Russian oligarchs, they would get a call from London and, would be told off for doing that, even though theoretically it's in their right. But I mean, none of that would ever happen. In Guernsey, and I speak about Guernsey because that's next door to me and I've spent a lot of time there. I know very little about Jersey, but that's just my ignorance. In Guernsey, things look pretty good for the long term. I mean, there's either no debt or just a little bit of debt. The GDP as a percentage of the overall, the taxation as a percentage of GDP is still only 24%, which in other parts of Europe is double that. There's no crime, and it's still a very happy place. So
as a microcosm, it's not falling foul of the same problems that larger states are falling for.
Not at all, no.
And what would the reason be? Just more wealthier people there?
I think it's culture. I'm not an expert for Guernsey. I hesitate somewhat to, portray the island in a certain way. But Guernsey is, as I always say, like how the UK used to be in the 1980s. There was a certain culture. Things are being done in a certain way that's respected. They're being done in the right way. There is community. People speak to each other. Things are coordinated in a reasonable fashion. And is it improving? No, it's not exactly getting much better there either. But it's a bit like Switzerland, like it's such a happy place that whatever you complain about if you live in Switzerland, 99% of the rest of the world would love to take your place.
Switzerland also, though, a relatively wealthy place. One of the we'll wrap it up soon.
Money helps. I have a Jewish friend who always says his mom told him, whether you're poor or you're rich, it's great to have money.
but I mean, the truth of the matter is, whenever we discuss on this podcast options, geo-arbitrage options, basically, you really end up coming down to two sort of categories. One is you go to where the rich people are. The other is you go to where the system hasn't quite, managed to get as ingrained, somewhere like Paraguay or here. And they're the two options, unfortunately. And, so that you see a lot of wealthy places around the world which are doing absolutely fine. They're like isolated from what you see in these great large states, which are essentially failing. There's not, and it's a sad thing, really. I mean, it's really when I think it through, it's really sad to think that that's the system we're in, and that you and I think both come to the conclusion that you can't actually fix it. You can't fix it. The only fix is a collapse fix, which is a terrible fix. It's the worst kind. But you can't unravel this. This is a bunch of string and so knotted, you cannot unravel it. You have to throw it away, or in the case of what we do here, you have to build something new somewhere, which is inevitably in one of those countries that hasn't quite amassed all this bureaucracy and red tape and but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Let's not end on a. Tell me something positive. Come on.
Well, what you just said, I would second every word of that. On a positive note, I mean, to repeat what I said earlier, you have more options than ever before. And I mean, I'm old enough to remember, for example, in the 90s, when you want to fly somewhere, you had to go to a travel agency. They looked up the secret knowledge in their computer about the flight times. Then you had to make a bank transfer to them. 3 days later, you picked up your paper ticket, which you needed at the airport. We live in a golden age of you've got your smartphone in your pocket. Countries are vying for the productive, the young, and anyone who's got at least a few dollars in their pockets. And it's sad to give up on the country that you grew up in, that gave you opportunities, that you feel deeply rooted in. But unfortunately, there is not always a happy ending for everything in life. And sometimes you just need to recognize reality for what it is and move on and deal with it in the best possible way. And I think this is why, another reason why I'm at the Free Cities conference this time again, because I want to see what's happening in this industry, because, I'm not getting paid to say this, but I think your industry, the team that you're working with, you are about to take off in a way that I don't think many people would think possibly yet. And I think you're on the cusp of something absolutely dramatic and amazing. And probably in a few years' time, we'll be, at this conference in a different venue, because so many more people will want to attend, and we'll think back to, the days when we met in Prague and there were only a couple hundred people, and, we did these podcasts and stuff like that. So I think great stuff is going to happen in your industry with the Free Cities movement, geo arbitrage, Plan B, all this stuff. And all I can say is, come to this event, listen to the podcasts, support the group by buying the books and the various other outputs that people affiliated with it have created. I'm only loosely part of it because, the plan that I had didn't work out. So I'm just basically a user of the whole alternative system, and I love it.
You are a user, but you are part of it, Sven. It's because there is, it's an ecosystem which is basically about living with people, and about, it's not some walled place that no one can come in. It's not a gated, it's an industry that needs all kinds of people, basically. And I do agree with you that the things like the fact that there are these new memes that appear in daily life about moving to other countries and moving to better places. Those are the signals that we are in this time. And I know, and as you probably know, there's a lot of things about to pop, so to speak, in this industry. And we're all here for it. I mean, So yeah, many thanks for popping in. I won't be able to be there for your talk, unfortunately, but I think I probably got the gist of it just then.
Delighted to have this conversation. Looking forward to seeing you again in the future, and hope this was of use to you. Readers, followers.
It will be, and I still think Sark will happen, because it has to happen. Like, if Sark's like either Sark happens the way that in some shape or form the way you envisaged it, or it just dies. So what it can't, and it won't die. No one's going to let Sark die. It's a beautiful place, and it's got a history, and it's got people that are living there. But it needs that. There's no other. What's the alternative? Like some form of communism. That's not going to solve the problem. So I'm still there with it. I think one day, just like you say, one day we'll be sitting talking about the good old days when we all met up in Prague. We may be on Sark talking about it. Because I think Sark has to happen, because I think when you have a resource like that, somebody somewhere is going to make it happen, because people look for things like that, like you did. People look for things to transform like that, and I think it will. It's just difficult at the moment, but good luck anyway, and thanks for popping in. It's good to see you again. We'll see where our paths cross next.
Thanks, Tim.